Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the mind of a guy who is literally at the very forefront of artificial intelligence, Google DeepMind's boss, Demis Hassabis. As he leads the charge toward artificial general intelligence, or AGI, we really need to understand the blueprint he's operating from. So let's dive right in. What actually drives the people building AGI? Honestly, it's probably the most important question of our era. Think about it. If AGI achieves what it's supposed to, a single individual leading a top AI lab could theoretically wield the kind of geopolitical and economic power usually reserved for world leaders. Because of that staggering reality, we have to look really closely at what fundamentally motivates these builders. Why AI? What are their underlying philosophies?
What's really fascinating is how early those motivations were formed for Hassabis. He credits his open-minded, deeply scientific approach to growing up with two incredibly contrasting philosophical inputs right at home. Picture this. On one side, his mother was a religious Baptist. On the other, his father was an atheist. Having to navigate these two vastly different worldviews as a kid deeply shaped his perspective. It taught him to keep an incredibly open mind and sparked this early, intense fascination with the biggest questions about our place in the universe.
That brings us to Section 1, the quest for knowledge.
Let's start with his foundational motivation, which is rooted in a lifelong obsession with simply understanding reality. He's actually quoted saying, "I just want to understand what's going on here in the universe." Before he was ever an entrepreneur or a big tech boss, Hassabis thought of himself as a scientist. Ever since his childhood studies in physics, he hasn't viewed AI as just software or some commercial product to sell. To him, it's the ultimate tool to advance our understanding of the world. It's like reality is this giant puzzle staring us in the face, and AI is his absolute best method for solving it.
So how exactly does he define the end goal? Well, he envisions AGI not as a single neat little app, but as a massive meta-technology. Think of it as a master key. Instead of writing one specific piece of software to cure one specific disease, you build an artificial general intelligence that is capable of solving the complex challenges of medicine entirely on its own, or discovering new energy sources, or tackling environmental crises. For Hassabis, AGI is the ultimate downstream application of our human quest for knowledge.
Let's move on to Section 2, building tools, not gods.
You've probably heard the dramatic media narratives out there, right? Even inside the AI industry, people will sometimes joke or seriously fret about the idea that they're quote-unquote building God. Well, Hassabis absolutely hates that kind of language. He explicitly rejects it, stating, "I don't like that kind of language. I think of this as a tool." He prefers to bring the conversation firmly back to down-to-earth human ingenuity. He just sees himself as following in the long, historical tradition of human beings doing what we do best, building useful things.
He views this whole thing through a highly practical lens. Forget the sci-fi god trope of something unexplainable, omnipotent, and worshipped. In his eyes, AGI is a scientific tool, plain and simple. Just like a telescope allows us to see distant galaxies, AI is essentially a cognitive telescope built by humans to interrogate the very fabric of reality. We are fundamentally tool-making animals with an insatiable thirst for knowledge, and AGI? It's just our most advanced instrument yet.
But of course, incredibly powerful tools require incredibly serious responsibility. Which brings us to Section 3, the risks of AGI. Despite his firm belief that AI is just a tool, Hassabis is fully aware that ever more capable tools inherently pose ever more serious threats to us. When people ask him if we should be worried about, destroying everything, he candidly points to a sobering reality. He admits there is a greater than 0% chance of things going quite badly wrong if the technology isn't built in the right way with the absolute utmost care. He openly acknowledges that the specific risks, we largely don't even know what they are yet. Because those exact risks are still unknown, he argues we have to rely on a 4-pillar framework for action. First up, exercise cautious optimism. You have to believe the problems can actually be solved. Second, utilize the precautionary principle. Basically, move really carefully when the stakes are literally this high. Third, rely on collective human ingenuity, which means getting the best minds across all the companies working on this safely. And finally, build correctly over time, rather than just rushing in blindly to be first.
Applying all that caution, however, is incredibly complex when you look at the real world today. Let's look at Section 4, navigating the AI race.
There is a huge, stark contrast between what was hoped for and where we actually are. Decades ago, Hassabis originally envisioned this beautiful, cooperative, CERN-like international effort for AI.
He pictured a scenario where the world's absolute best researchers would gather together, carefully double-checking each other's work as we slowly approached the AGI event horizon. But the current reality? It's vastly different. We're living in a world of highly fragmented geopolitics, featuring intense race conditions, not just between rival tech corporations, but between competing global nations. And this fragmented, hyper-competitive reality, it is honestly a bit alarming when you look at the timeline. Hassabis actually suggests that we might be only 5 years away from achieving artificial general intelligence. 5 years. We are not talking about some distant sci-fi future anymore. It's literally right on our doorstep. The time frame we have left to figure out global cooperation is shrinking incredibly fast.
Because an international utopian coalition seems pretty unlikely in today's fractured world, Hassabis is pointing to a much more pragmatic, immediate goal. As the momentous impact of AGI becomes super obvious to everyone over the next few years, his hope is that the leading AI labs will quickly align on baseline minimum standards for safety. Establishing these foundational rules of the road is absolutely crucial if we want to survive these corporate and geopolitical races safely. So, considering all of that, what is the end game for him as he navigates these massive challenges? Let's hit Section 5, the ultimate mission. Hassabis is operating on a roadmap that is almost hard to believe, but it is entirely true. He actually wrote down a master plan for his life when he was just a teenager. Step 1 was writing out that incredibly ambitious piece of paper. Step 2, win a Nobel Prize, which, by the way, he just successfully checked off his list. But despite reaching the literal pinnacle of traditional scientific achievement, he says his life's most critical work is still ahead of him. Step 3 is his ultimate mission, to get AGI safely over the line so it can benefit absolutely everyone in the world.
And that brings us to a question that affects every single one of us. As Dimas Hassabis and his peers dedicate their lives to building this ultimate cognitive telescope, navigating fractured geopolitics, corporate sprint races, and non-zero existential risks to deliver AGI, it really leaves us to ponder, is society truly prepared for this historic leap? The blueprint for the technology is being drawn up right now, but the blueprint for how we handle it, that is entirely up to us. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.